everybody, and welcome back to episode 2 of Tekken Talk. And now we're here with 3 legendary guests to talk about what's next in the Tekken 8 development cycle. Today we're joined by MarkMan Julio, who is the Director of Business Development for EVO, Michael Murray, the producer for Tekken Project, and we're also joined by Katsuhiro Harada, also known as Harada-san, who is the Director of Tekken Project. Thank you so much for joining us here.
My pleasure.
We have a lot to talk about today, okay? We're here to talk about the next step in Tekken 8's development. We're here to talk about the closed alpha test results, which we have all had the chance to participate in. And we're also going to get ready for the closed network test. So let's talk about the alpha test first. Tell me, what are some of the highlights of the feedback that you've received from the closed alpha test?
だから当初は予想としては結構コアなプレイヤーから始めるわけじゃないですか、テストって。大会基本的には参加してないと、エボジャパンとかもそうでしたけど、レジストレーションして大会参加してないとクローズにアルファテストに参加できないってなってるんで、逆に言うと鉄拳すごく分かってる人たちなので、しかも今回大きくいろんなシステムが変わってるから、かなり逆に言うとその反動というか反発も逆にあるだろうし、すごい手厳しいことを最初言われるってことをかなり覚悟して出したんだけど、この2人は真っ先に実は一番心配したのはみんなの反応がちょっとポジティブすぎて、でこれはおそらくバイアスがかかってて、自分が自らがちゃんと積極的に参加してるっていう意味でもともとポジティブだし、選ばれたってことでもポジティブだし、で世界で一番最初に触れるっていうところでもポジティブだし、そういうところの心理的影響がかなり大きかったんじゃないかなってことで、実は反応ちゃんとねプレイしてるところを僕ら見たりとか、積極的にプレイヤーにどうだったかっていうのを結構僕なんかエボジャパンでね2日間ずっとそればっかり聞いてたんですけど、そういうことをこっちから積極的に行って、何が理解されてて何が理解されてないかとか、このポイントを特に重点的に我々から拾いに行ったってところが非常に印象的なテストでしたね。
ケイもそうだったよね、後ろで見て。
そうそうそう。
So this time is also a little bit different than normal because in order to participate in the CAT, it was like EVO Japan or Combo Breaker, like you mentioned. I think one of the conditions was that they actually were registered for the tournament. So this was mainly, the hardcore Tekken audience that was picked up to play the game and to give their feedback. So we were expecting more critical feedback from this group who obviously understands Tekken and the game system and mechanics quite well. Although, this time around, it is a brand new system with a lot of new mechanics. So a lot of people were quite happy just to be able to see that. And so we were expecting more critical feedback, but what we got was overwhelmingly positive. So we were kind of hesitant to believe it wholly, Also to kind of help even that out, Harada mentioned how he was at EVO Japan watching players, not you get the comments from them directly, but you also get a lot more information just watching them play the game and seeing what they're maybe not using, maybe what they don't understand, maybe what they do understand and they're enjoying quite a bit. So we were able to see that directly during the CAT as well, which was very helpful.
Awesome. So Mark, as Michael mentioned, we had the closed alpha test at EVO Japan. That was the first closed alpha test that we had. You also got to try it.
Yes.
You've tried it everywhere.
Yes, every event that I've been to, I've tried the closed alpha test. I signed up for it as well. So it was a fun experience, as a lot of the players mentioned. One of the things I noticed, though, and this was kind of universal from a lot of the players that had a chance to try the closed alpha test, is they all mentioned that they wish they had more time to play it.
For me, as someone who helped oversee the closed alpha test for Combo Breaker, I got a lot of positive feedback as well. A lot of people saying, please thank them for me. I love this game. Also, please give me a free copy. So, you're going to get those requests too.
I know. I also think it's probably because of some of the changes we made because, the gaming mechanics that are new across the board. But then, obviously up until now, we had characters that had maybe a few moves that were added. But this time, because of the heat system and how it gives the characters more unique abilities across, individual abilities for each character, that they want more time to play each character and get a feeling for what the nuances are. So I think that kind of adds to wanting to play it more.
So for the people at home who may not have been able to see your initial keynote about the heat system, can you explain, the basics of the heat system for us?
はい、今回の、鉄拳8は、テーマ自体が、アグレッシブっていうテーマを取ってます。で、あのー皆さんね、あんまり普段冷静には考えないかもしれないですけど、格闘ゲームって、実は結構珍しくて、ディフェンスってもともとすごく強いゲームなんですよ。大体の対戦ゲームって攻撃に対してある程度のダメージは通るんですけど、ブロックで、ディフェンスでこうガードできるってことによって、基本的にはダメージをゼロにできちゃうっていうところでいうと、割と対戦ゲームとしては珍しくこうディフェンシブなことが非常に強い。3D 格闘ゲームはさらに横移動とかもあったりとか、ステージが非常に広かったりするので、技を避ける手段って結構あるんですけど、今回は鉄拳8になることでかなりそこをちょっと見直して、もちろんディフェンシブなムーブも強いんですけど、アグレッシブにみんなに攻めてもらって、見ている人も遊んでる人も、非常にこう攻めて見てて楽しい爽快感がある、興奮するタイミングが、あるっていうような、ゲームを実現しようと思って、今作ってます。
So, the heat state and the mechanics before we go into, you have to kind of get an idea of the background of eight and the philosophy, and that is that it focuses on allowing the players to play more aggressively, and the reason for this is fighting games are kind of unique as far as multiplayer games go. In general, in a multiplayer game, if you attack your opponent and you're spot on, the damage is done, right? But for fighting games, you have first off, you can block it,
Yep.
negating all the damage. Not just that, but 3D games in particular, 3D fighting games, you can sidestep to avoid your opponent's attacks. So defense is already such a strong element in fighting games that focusing on this aggressive element we thought was going to make the game more entertaining. Not just to the people who are playing the games, but also for people who are watching, the spectators. It's much more fun to see the people actually go on the offensive and attack their opponent. So this was a major core philosophy behind the game.
はい、で攻撃仕掛ける側はもちろんすごく楽しめて、よく本当の格闘技の試合でもあるんですけど、この第2ラウンドのここがすごいクライマックスで、ここが勝負を分けたよねみたいな、場所がすごく、分かりやすいっていうのと、あとは、全体の的にもともと鉄拳ってキャラに個性はあるんですけど、さらにその個性、攻め方、戦略とか技の動きだけじゃなくてね、プレイヤーによってとかキャラクターによって攻め方とか戦略が大きく変わってくるっていうところを強調する、ゲームにしたいなというふうに思ってます。
Also, to just make it more enjoyable spectator experience is to make it easy to understand how the tide of battle is changing and where this decisive moment occurs,
Right.
especially if you're maybe looking at the last round, which is where some of that often happens, and to just be able to have these visual cues about when that starts to change. But not just that, it's also some of the changes we made to the characters' uniqueness during the heat state. That they've always had their own particular play style and attacks, etc. But the strategy that's more effective for each character and the kind of strategy that they want to employ to actually follow through and win the match, these are kind of more emphasized, I guess you could say, during the heat state. So those were some of the core philosophies that we wanted to put in the forefront.
So tell us a little bit more in depth about the heat state itself. Tell us what we're able to do and how that affects the gameplay.
So basically, when you choose to enter the heat state, each character has certain characteristics that are brought out because of that. Maybe they have access to certain moves that they don't normally, or maybe like King, he can recover his heat gauge by certain throws, etc.
Mhm.
So the uniqueness of the character is made even more unique during the state in offensive capacity, I guess you could say. Another big element is that this wasn't in Tekken 7 either, that if I'm playing Mark, I engage the heat state, my attacks now do a certain specific type of damage to him. Even if he's guarding, you'll see his life gauge deplete. It's
Right.
still white.
Yep.
So it's not confirmed yet. But then if I'm able to confirm that chunk, it goes away. on the other hand, if he goes on the offensive or plays quite well, he can recover that gauge. So that's another brand new way that's tied, a brand new method that's tied into this gameplay. So it's focused on being aggressive on the offense, but it actually adds a whole new layer to the characters and their abilities. It makes the game even more entertaining. Some other special actions we have as well. We touched on this earlier with you have the heat engagers and you have the heat burst. But then once you're in the heat state, you also have access to a heat smash, which is kind of like a rage art in the fact that it's a super move that has very cool animations unique to each character that you can use to deal massive damage to your opponent. That said, you use all your remaining gauge, so you have to be careful on when you choose to use that. There's also a cool heat dash, which if maybe you've seen in the trailer, I think
Yep.
like the one at Combo Breaker. In the middle of a combo, you can choose to use some of your gauge to do a heat dash to connect it, or maybe push them closer to the wall, etc. So you have a lot of these cool options that become available once you're in the heat state.
Yeah, that's great because usually, there are moves that knock them far away and at that point the combo will end, but then they can extend it with the heat dash, right?
Right.
Cool. So we talked a little bit about the changes. You mentioned a little bit about it. Can you guys tell us what kind of changes is the team planning based
From
off of the
CAT,
feedback? Yeah,
right?
based
Yeah.
off of feedback from the closed alpha
Okay.
test.
CT のフィードバック
一番変わったとこね
どういうところを変えたのかというう。
ん、今回実はかなりフィードバックから抽出して細かい項目で書いていくとね結構あるんですよ。ただそこは意外ともともと気づいてなかったとことが今説明してもねしっくりこないとこなので、一番みんなに分かる形で大きいところで言うと、実はヒートエナジーっていうのがあったんですけど、ヒートエナジーっていうものをこう8ってマーカーがあったんですよね。ヒートエナジーは完全になくしました。であとはそのヒートバーストとかあとヒート発動技をやった後にヒートスマッシュって技が出てたんですけど、これの出す技、ヒートスマッシュの出し方を基本的にはコマンドを統一させたっていうところは、ここら辺が一番大きいですね。で、そのヒートエナジーなくした代わりに、いわゆるヒート時間みたいなものもちょっと延長されていて、基本的にはゲーム自体を、シンプルにして、理解しやすくした、ざっくり言っちゃうとここはかなり一番大きい変更点ですね。
So the biggest change we made was we got a lot of feedback from the players and noticed that maybe some of the system wasn't as clear as we had wanted it to be. Like one of the biggest changes, I went into a lot of detail during the original, press conference and stuff. But the heat system and the kind of the stock, the heat energy stock that you had, if you looked at the health gauge to the bottom of it, right, you had the little chain mark that signified that. So that was a little bit more in depth about, if you do a heat engager, you get more. If you do it directly, maybe not so much. So we wanted to streamline it a little bit more. So that's gone. So all the stuff you can do with heat energy is still there. It's just that stock way of doing it is gone.
Yeah, so the little 8 markers are now gone.
Right.
You used to get 2 and now that whole system is gone.
So you still have the heat engagers. You still have the direct way of entering it. It's just that you have a time gauge pretty much, and how much time remaining, etc., is kind of affected by how you chose to enter that state. But it's a much more easy to understand presentation.
その今までは意外とこうヒート発動技からやるとこうマーカーが2つついて、でこのエナジーを消費してヒートダッシュしてからヒートスマッシュとか、ヒートダッシュはそっかこの1個使ったらこれ1個減るんだよなっていうこと全部覚えなきゃいけなかったのが、マイケルがさっき言ったようにシンプルになったんだけど、これ面白いのがじゃあそこに対して分かりにくいって不満がいっぱいあったから変えたんではなくて、そもそも分かりにくいとかいうフィードバックが最初全然集まんなかったんですね。でこれおかしいなと思ってプレイする様子を見てたら俺から見ると分かってるようには見えなかった。で聞いていくと、実は分かりにくかったかどうかっていうことに対しては別に分からないことはないってみんな言うんだけど、理解しているかどうかって意味で、できることをちゃんと質問していくと割とみんなまだ分かってなくて、いやこれからどうせプレイして覚えれる勉強できるからじゃあ大丈夫だと思うってみんな言うんだけど、実際には結構理解されてなかったんですよ。 かなり。で、マーカーがこう残ってるとあと何ができるとか、この時はこれ消えるんだよねとか、意外とやっぱり深掘りしていくと確認してくるコメントがすごい多いんだけど、まあ、ほとんどは間違ってたり、もしくはそもそも存在を理解してなかったりってことが多かったので、これはちょっとまだ早すぎたかなと、導入が。っていう意味で、一回削除するっていう決断をしたところ、まあ、今のところ社内でもかなり分かりやすくなって、評判はいいので、これをみんなにまたテストしてもらいたいなと思ってます。
So this wasn't feedback that we received where people said, I don't understand it. It's difficult. Everyone was kind of like very positive that I don't really understand it that well now, but I'll get the hang of it when I play it. But we wanted it to be that you get it right away, right? So and then asking following questions, like, okay, you have the heat dash, you have the heat smash, which are typical optimized gameplay, etc. And you kind of ask some questions and find out they actually don't really understand it, and that it might take some time to get a hold of it. So that's really why we made the decision on our side that, okay, perhaps we should simplify the presentation. And after doing so, obviously we've been playing a lot internally, not just our balancing team, but other employees who aren't Tekken fanatics. And right now, everyone's saying that it's much easier to understand and much more streamlined. So, and to tack on as well some other changes. The heat smash, you had individual commands for each character, where now it's pretty much simplified that it's the same command for every character.
Cool.
Usually a button press, and so we've made those changes. But just to go into a little bit about also how it works with the heat engage, or whether you go directly into the heat burst. So you just still have the same timer, but if you do the heat engager, you start off with a full timer. Or if you go in via the heat burst, then your timer starts with a little bit depleted. So that's how we kind of balance it out. But the presentation is easier to understand.
That's cool. So Mark, as someone who is a Tekken fanatic, what are your thoughts on these changes so far? Do you think that it was a good change that they removed the heat energy, or do you think that this will change how you're going to play the game now?
I think for a lot of people, it's just going to take time to kind of get used to it. It being more visual in terms of knowing when you're in heat, and then not having to pay attention to things like, oh, do I have stock? Do I have not? Just seeing, I guess, an energy meter will help, I think, in the long run. But also the differentiation between doing the heat burst and a heat engager, to have different benefits for both. I think that's going to go a long way in terms of how people plan on utilizing it.
We also lengthened the timer a little bit, so that'll be an interesting change for players who played CAT.
あと細かいところだとあれだね、まあいっぱいあるんだけど、レイジアーツのガードされた時に結構ちょっとフリーフレームを増やした。だから何が言いたいかというと、結構今回体力回復ゲージがあって、回復でき、まあコンボすごい削りダメージとかコンボを入れられても回復できるので。で回復することによって結構なんだろう、今までだったらレイジアーツ出さなきゃいけない時って自分の体力もすごい少ないままだったから、ガードされるとそのまま逆転 KO されるみたいなことが多かったんだけど、今割と安全にレイジアーツを打てる体力が残るみたいなことが結構 CAT 見てて起きてるなって思ったんで、そこはあえてもこのレイジアーツはガードされたら結構大きい反撃、今まで以上に大きい技を食らうよっていうちょっとリスクリターンみたいな調整とかも入ってますね。
ね、俺も最初遊んだ時に、ガードできたレイジャーツなのに反撃できなくてびっくりして、なんかこれ何なのって。
で結構体力残ってるし相手も、なんかレイジ打ってきてるのに相手回復してるからみたいなのもあったんだけど、まあそこら辺ちょっとやっぱ7のいいところをね、CAT では消しちゃってた部分があるから、あえてちょっとリスクリターンを取ってレイジャーツはガードされたら結構危ないよっていうふうにしました。
There's actually a long list of smaller adjustments we've made, but some of them were major ones we've been talking about in the previous question. But to add to that, the rage arts, I'm sure Mark noticed it. This time around, for Tekken 7, if you were blocked on a rage art, you got launched pretty much. But this time, a lot of myself included, you blocking like, oh, it's my turn, and then you can't, counterattack them. And this was that way in CAT. But we noticed that along with the other, improvements and additions in Tekken 8, such as recoverable health gauge. So before, when you lost your health and you were able to do a rage art in the first place, there was no way to recover that health, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much. So it was like you're on your last leg. But this time, since you could recover your gauge, it could be the case that at least we saw in CAT, people were just throwing it out because they're like, okay, well, I'm down now. I'll throw it out and then, I'll recover the gauge.
Right.
So we figured that maybe balance-wise, it's better to increase the frames. What would you call it? That you're at a disadvantage when the rage art's blocked. So that's been another big change that we made since people played it last time.
Harada-san, you have been walking the floor at all of these events as well. And I know that you have that, the catchphrase, don't ask me for stuff. But tell me, what has the community been telling you about Tekken 8 so far?
なんか依頼があったりとか、なんかフィードバックあったりとか。
そうですね。割とさっきも言ったんですけど、みんなとってもポジティブだったので、基本的にはまずゲームは面白いっていうのと、結構グラフィックのこと言ってる人多かったですね。僕らはまだこれ CAT の段階でライティングとかの調整が全然終わってないし、もうちょっと本当は絵は良くなるはずなんですけど、もうこの時点でみんながすごい綺麗綺麗って言ってるのと、だから僕は逆にね聞いてて不安になりましたね、そこは。あんまりいいことばっかり言われると、なんかどっかに落とし穴があるんじゃないかなと思っちゃう。本当はもっと細かいこととか大きいこととか含めてバーって言われるんだろうなって覚悟してたし。
ね、セブンの時の方がまだなんかいっぱい
セブンはやっ
言われた気がする。
ぱアーケードのユーザーうるさいっていうのもあるけどね、そのワンコインにお金がかかってるし、だから相当あるかなと思ったんですけど、なんかねやたらポジティブなんですよ。でそれ以上にさっき言ったようになんか初期のキャラクター数とか結構気にする人多かったですね。やっぱり
質問多かったね。
やっぱ完全新作で、絵もこれだけ変わって、で誰の目から見ても明らかだったと思うんですよ。全部作り直してるっていうのが、ほとんどゼロとは言わないけど一から作り直して、モデルから何から全部やり直してるってことに対して、ってことはお金もかかってるだろうし、初期はすごくキャラ少ないんじゃないかって心配してる人が多くて、唯一心配されてたのそこかな。だからキャラがちょっと減るんじゃないのとか、すごい少ないローンチになるんじゃないかって言われてたんですけど、そこは僕らは意外といやー思ったよりは用意してるんだよねと思いつつそれぐらいかな。でもあとは本当にポジティブだったから、ちょっとそこは本当に意外でした。もっといろいろあると思ったんだけどね。
Yeah, so Harada was just mentioning that all the feedback he received from the players in the community was overwhelmingly positive. He was actually a bit nervous because it was so positive. We're not used to this. But, it mainly focused on the graphics first off, because I think that's the overwhelming impression that people first got from the title, as just the level of improvement in the graphics due to, creating the environments and the characters from scratch. And so that left a lasting impression. And then since that, that led to the next feedback was, well, can we expect as many characters as we usually do? Because you're making all these things from scratch, and
Right.
that requires time, money, resources, etc. So we can't obviously announce a character roster at this point, but we were like, well, we have more than you probably expect, at least more than the competition. So yeah, those are the 2 points mainly, with the graphics and what about the characters?
Awesome. And once again, I would really like to thank all of the community who participated in all of the closed alpha tests. These guys got to interact with you firsthand. And thank you so much for the feedback, because the feedback that you have provided through the surveys, through talking to these gentlemen, it actually has gone into the development of Tekken 8, and you will see it at our next stop, which is the closed network test. And as you gentlemen know, the closed network test will be happening very soon, starting on July 21st and 28th. And it has a lot of the changes implemented from feedback from the closed alpha test. But Michael, tell me a little bit more. Tell me about the characters. Tell me about what to expect.
So all the things that we just talked about, right? The changes in the heat system and the presentation of that, plus Harada's mentioned about the rage arts and other details. All those gameplay mechanic changes will be in that build. But like we're saying, everyone's like, who's in the build or who's the characters? So basically, all the trailers that we've released so far, right? So we have Jin, we have Kazuya, we have Jun, Paul Phoenix, Law, King, Lars, Jack 8, Xiaoyu, Nina, Leroy, Lily, Asuka, Hwarang, Brian, and then the latest one, obviously, Claudio.
That was
So,
really good memory. He named every single character from memory.
yeah,
amazing.
it's like always thinking about has someone leaked or not. So I have a good stock here.
まあでもみんな勘違いしてほしくないのは発売する時もっと増えてるからねキャラ。今回のネットワークテストではすごい絞ってるけど。
So, obviously this was just trying to give players a good representation of a limited roster because we're going to have much more than that when the game releases. This is just a small sampling of it.
Love it. So for all of you who are worried about your favorite character, you have more time to think about that.
Also the stages though, we have a few stages. So we've got the Urban Square Evening stage. We've also got, what was it? The Yakushima, the one that we showed when June was revealed.
Yeah.
Rebel Hangar, and Sanctum, and the Arena stage. So you got a few choices there to check out during the closed network test.
Yeah, and they all have different ways of interacting with the stage as well, right?
Right. Like people who have played 7, you'll know that when you select the stage, it'll give you a little diagram of the shape of it,
Right.
how open it is. Also, if there's like destructible walls or floors. And some of those mechanics have been changed a little bit for Tekken 8 as well. So it's something to check out.
So all the people at home who want to take notes, you have a lot of things to take notes on, the characters and the stages. There's a lot to learn and a lot to see in the closed network test. So we just talked a little bit about what to expect in-game in the closed network test, but tell me a little bit about those dates, the July 21st and July 28th days.
Right. So like you mentioned, there's 2 different dates. That's one thing to keep in mind. It's very important. The first one is going to be PlayStation 5 only. So we're looking at, the feedback and making sure everything works correctly. And then on the second date, we're opening it up to the cross-platform because we're going to have cross-play in this game. So obviously it's going to be in the retail version when it comes out, but we wanted to, since it's a brand new feature, to have this test at this current time where we can still make sure everything is working correctly before moving into further development. So on the second dates that you mentioned, we're going to have not only the PS5, but PC and also Xbox Series S and X. So people can play each other online across platforms, and we hope that everyone will test it out for us. That said, I assume that everyone is now currently eagerly waiting to find out whether they got into the test or not.
I hope I get in. I hope I get in.
Would MarkMan never get into a test? I don't know.
I hope I won't.
So yeah, we'll know. I hope that everyone used their normal email that they check because that's where the reply is going to go to tell you whether you got into or not. And then once they've had a chance to test the game, I hope that they'll give us, there's a questionnaire that we'll send the link to in the same email address to fill out that, give us your feedback so that we can make improvements to the game before it ships.
That's awesome. So once again, everybody, check those emails. Hopefully you used the right email.
Yeah.
And if you did, then check it. And also, please, once again, we are humbly asking for your feedback because once again, with the closed alpha test, we use that feedback. With the closed network test, we plan to use that feedback as well. And once again, thank you so much for participating in these tests because you are helping us make Tekken 8 the best game it could possibly be with the help of these 3 gentlemen as well. But yeah, so I think that we covered everything related to the closed network test. And that brings us to the end of the Tekken Talk. But before we sign off, is there anything that you would like to say to the fans?
いや、そうですね。まだまだ、ね、さっき言ったように発表してないキャラクターもありますし、もちろん実は、今回のテストは非常にシンプルなやり方でやってますけど、本当はね、みんなにもっともっと見てもらいたいコンテンツとか、いろんなもの用意、当たり前ですけどしてるので、そういうのは今後もどんどん発表していって、こんなにまだあるんだとか、こんなのがあるんだって感じで、もう発売までね、みんなワクワクさせて、で、意見をこういうふうに、取り入れつつっていうことでやっていきたいと思います。まあ何より、ちょっとみんな忘れがちですけど、特にね、欧米の人にとっては、アーケードスタートじゃなくて、初めて家庭用からスタートする鉄拳なので、みんなワールドワイドでスタートダッシュも一緒だし、はい、そういう意味で言うと非常に盛り上がりやすい環境を整えてやっていきたいと思うので、今ならいろんなまだ意見、反映できる時間もちょっとは残されているはずなので、みんな 新しい情報楽しみにして、こういったテストにどんどん参加していってもらえばと思います。よろしくお願いします。
So Harada was just mentioned that obviously we've been showing off the game a little bit with trailers, etc., mainly focusing on the battle mechanics and new systems. But there's a lot of other content that we have being created that we can't wait to show before the release date. Also, thank you everyone who's taken the time to participate in either CAT or the CNT and give us feedback, because we still have slightly a little bit of time still that we can take that feedback and reflect it into the game. So thank you, and we hope that you continue to do so. Is his comment. And for me, I'm just really excited to finally be showing this game after working on it for so long and having to keep my mouth shut, my lips sealed about it. And it's just great to see everyone's reactions. Like Harada's talking about how they were blown away from the graphics. And like he mentioned that I'm adding now because I forgot it, but this is the first time it's on console from the start, right? Which is huge. Maybe some people who are new to the franchise don't recognize the significance there, but it's not Japan and Korea and other arcade locations getting a version and then console. This is everyone from the start. So it should be, a very exciting launch where everyone's going to get their hands on the game at the same time. And just to see that happen is going to be great. So don't miss out.
Mark, what are your thoughts about Tekken 8? Any wishes for these gentlemen?
I mean, I could go down a list of characters that I would love to see in the game, but I'm not going to do that to them because I'm sure they get that all the time on Twitter.
You got King already?
I need the other King. Tasty Steve would agree, I'm sure. But again, I'm just blown away seeing the feedback, seeing all the people that are showing up to the different ways to play the game through the closed alpha test prior to this. And I hope I see you guys on the closed network test because that's going to be fun. So we'll battle then.
Mark's basically saying he got in already. Anyway, thank you so much to all three of you for participating in this Tekken Talk. Once again, everybody, thank you for your participation in the closed alpha test and the closed network test. And just remember that if you would like to find more information on Tekken, please remember to follow @Tekken on Twitter and Instagram, and also check out the Tekken Discord. Thanks again, everybody. See you next time.